Today we're talking about some Commander overperformers.
I'm Mia, and I like choosing the water starter in Pokemon.
I'm BZ. I've never played a Pokemon game in my entire life. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, and if you'd like to support this channel that you're maybe just hearing about for the first time, I'm thinking Dragon Shield. They got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
So head over to the EU or US links we provided in the description and buy sleeves from the source and support the channel for no extra cost.
We're also sponsored by Moxfield, best deck building website on the entire internet. There's going to be an ad somewhere. You can't guess where it is. If you did, you're lying. Also, happy birthday to everyone whose birthday's today and your pets.
And you may have noticed we forgot Cool Stuff, but not really. Cool Stuff Inc. is a website where you can go buy cards. Probably one of the best ones to go buy cards. If you use code
NERDS
at checkout, you're going to save 5% on your order. But that's not all, because October 20th to the 22nd, what is it, Mia?
We are going to be at Command Fest Orlando. We're going to be jamming games with everyone who's there, doing some meet and greets, and so you can come play with us if you're there.
Yes, come play with us. We will be jamming games for the entire weekend, and everyone who plays with us gets an exclusive Mox Amber token.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to give those out, and so yeah, come play games with us.
Yes, and order your tickets in the description. We got a link for you. We're going to see you there. It's going to be great. But today we have Overperformers. These Commander cards that are playing out a lot better than we initially thought, surprising us lately, kind of just being awesome when we didn't think they would necessarily be that awesome. Mia's got a good one to go first.
Absolutely. Vicious Shadows. 6 and a red for an enchantment that says, whenever a creature dies, you can have Vicious Shadows deal damage to target player equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. I really like this because it doesn't have to be the controller of the creature that died. You can just pick any player. So I've hit people with 7 cards in their hand when it's someone who's about to die, has just like a token die. It's really, really more damage than you'd think it would be.
Right, so we're talking Overperformers. Like I just said, plays better than I thought they would. Now, if you ask me how I thought this card would play, I would say it's garbage. But every time I see it in play, it's actually pretty good. I'm not saying it's busted, but it like actually does a ton of damage, and it's a force to be reckoned with pretty much every time. And if it's your first time playing against it, you will have to read it not once, but twice, because you're going to go, wait, it's whenever anyone's creature dies, and we take damage equal to our hand size? It doesn't make any sense, but it deals a ton of damage. If you're the leading player and you're the threat, you got to watch out, because one board wipe just kills you.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people play board wipes into this, even though it has been explained a couple times, just because they always think that it's just certain creatures trigger it. But no, it really stacks up damage. We actually played a game with someone recently, and they died to Vicious Shadows because they played a board wipe into it.
They're like, oh, I'll just wipe the board and not worry about it. And then we're just like, you misread something because you're dead. Mia's played this a lot, and it really, I've never really seen it be dead. She doesn't even play like sack outlets. But even if you're the red-black sack deck, this card is like a game ender. It doesn't even matter what all the goofy text is. Your opponents won't have time to read it because they'll just be dead.
Yeah, I play it in a deck that is about drawing cards, something Nekuzar-esque, but it's a little bit of like a weird homebrew mix. And it's really good because I try and get everyone to have as many cards as possible in hand, especially like with like Folio Fancy, so you get like 20 and you want to mill them with Folio, but this is a good backup plan. Now that the soundproofing is out of the way, let's move on to the next one. One of my commanders, actually, for the deck I was just talking about. Ishai Ojutai Dragon Speaker. 2 blue and a white for a 1/1 flyer. It has partner, so you can pair it with something really cool. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on him. And that's any spell.
And that's it. That's all it does.
But it stacks up so quickly. If you see people with like cantrips or, like BZ baubles, you could get 4 to 6 counters in a single turn, especially a turn around the board. It can become lethal, especially as your commander.
Yeah, so I don't really like Mana Gorger Hydra, but this one has played out differently. Mia, are you going to say this is an overperformer as a commander or just in general?
I think it's an overperformer as a commander. I think the 21 commander damage to lose really makes this the overperformer.
That's true. That really shortens the clock. That's probably one of the reasons I don't like Mana Gorger. So this has evasion. I feel like there's just something about Ishai where you're like always not prepared for it somehow, and you're like, it's a 7/7, and you're just like, I need to advance my board state. I don't have a flyer. It's harder to deter a flyer, it seems like, than a random trampler. Maybe that's because it's commander damage, but Ishai always makes me feel like I'm under a ton of pressure, even if you play it and it's a 1/1.
Yeah, I think that another reason is because people don't really realize that it's a threat until it's too late, or they think it's going to be swung somewhere else. But there's always going to be at least one person in what I've seen that doesn't have a flyer on the board and makes for like an easy target, or or at least if you want to take out their biggest flyer. Oh, yours is an 8/8. Ishai's a 15/15.
Yeah.
Like, okay, block or take 15 points of commander damage.
Yeah, Ishai is really, really annoying. One of the more annoying partners. I think more annoying than a lot of the other ones, like Vile Smasher and, Thrasios and Tim, they're up there, but Ishai is like next for me. It's really annoying. Next is Lithoform Engine. This is a card that I thought was garbage. Again, I thought it was terrible, and now I feel like every time I play against it, I'm like, I gotta kill that thing. It's a 4-mana artifact, 2-tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You can choose new targets. 3-tap, copy an instant or sorcery you control. You can choose new targets. And 4-tap, copy target permanent spell you control, which means if I play Scavenging Ooze and I pay 4-tap, copy it, I get a token that's a copy of Scavenging Ooze. It's the same exact thing. It's really expensive. It's a 4-mana do nothing. And then I just feel like if you're playing those games, though, that they go long and there's a lot of resources exchanged, this starts creeping up to the most valuable thing on the board.
It definitely shines in the later games, and if you have artifact synergies, it's been really good. Clock of Omens, if you can't use it immediately, you just tap it and one other thing to untap something else that you might need. I don't know. I've had really good luck with this in my door deck. I've had people copy it from my door deck using some sort of like clever impersonator or something, and then just get triggers left and right. I don't know. I feel like you've never played it in a deck of your own.
No, I haven't.
You've seen it played against you, and it's always been pretty nasty.
Yeah, and I'm always a little bit annoyed. So Lithoform Engine is now on my radar. I might put it into a deck. This is your friendly reminder that it is a card that exists, and if you're playing slower games especially, I would consider it if you've got a lot of triggered abilities, because that's the cheapest mode. I want probably to be able to copy a lot of activated or triggered, because paying 4 and tapping it every turn is kind of a lot.
True, but also the target instant or sorcery spell is not bad.
There's a lot of choices. It gives you a lot of modes.
Because there's a lot of spells that copy instants or sorceries also, and they're a lot more expensive than this anyways. So slotting this in as an artifact might not be too bad.
Right, we'll go to the next one. It's Aerial Extortionist. We talked about this card. We hyped it up a while ago, and let me just tell you, we were right. It's 3 white for a 4/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it. So it's kind of like you return it to its owner's hand. They don't have to pay any premium. They just cast it from exile. But when they cast a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. And that includes graveyards and command zones, which do come up quite frequently, quite often. It's a thing that happens.
Often. Yes. Having it with exile, like exiling the top of your library and casting from there too, this could really shine with like an Urbrask or something.
Impulse draw. If your opponents are impulse drawing, they're in serious trouble. This thing is like a card draw engine, but also it's just kind of this disruptive, I don't want to say removal exactly, but it's interaction. It forces them to replay all their stuff knowing that you're going to get advantage out of it. And part of the thing that I've loved about this card is that it just stays around. It's going to happen every single turn. You're going to hit somebody who doesn't have a flyer, and then you can exile the best non-land permanent, whether or not it's controlled by the person you just hit. So I've made deals with this thing. It's so good.
As I mentioned earlier, at least one person will not have a flyer, so you will be able to swing in for that damage. And 4 is like, a pretty good chunk, at least on a 5-mana creature. Plus the fact that, like, when you get the trigger of exiling up to 1 permanent and then keeping it in exile and casting it again without tax, that doesn't seem too bad. But it actually gets really annoying really quickly, especially since it does happen when it comes down on the field too.
Yeah, worst case scenario with this card a lot of the time is you just exile a 5-drop. Next turn they replay it. Great, you wasted 5 of their mana and you drew a card, and this thing might suck up some removal after that, but otherwise it's going to be a value engine. I've been so happy with this every time. Please play this card. It's really good.
Yeah, I definitely have to slot it into more decks. This is pretty cool. This one, we were talking about in the last video, but it's so good. Teferi, Master of Time. 2 blue, you can activate his loyalty abilities anytime you could cast an instant. +1, draw and discard. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. And -10, take 2 extra turns after this one. He comes in with loyalty 3. And the +1 and the -3, doing that every turn is just stacks up.
Yeah. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it's fantastic filtering. It's going to get you to the cards you need. It's going to make it more likely that every time someone has a big spell, you have a response. You have a counter spell. You can dig for an answer. You have a removal spell to mess them up. You can even just phase out their best creature with Teferi. That's just how good he is. This, I think, is one of the best Planeswalkers in Commander. I want to stress it again. The reason that I wouldn't play this card is because it's so good that it's going to start time stretching and taking extra turns, even if everyone gangs up on you. So if you aren't really worried about that and you have like a high power, you're playing like Toon games, get this card in your deck. Get this card in your blue deck. I just want like any little bit of piece of synergy. So like you want to fill the graveyard, you care about discarding, you maybe have some kind of Planeswalker synergies. Teferi is so good. I don't remember our exact Planeswalker rankings, but Planeswalkers are a weak type. This is an exception. I think it's one of the 10 best Planeswalkers in the format, if not top 5.
I don't really like Planeswalkers for the most part because they're unable to protect themselves usually, and that their abilities don't do much, especially since you can only activate them one per turn cycle. But Teferi just negates all of that. He can phase out the creature that's trying to attack him. He can activate on everybody's turn. 4 activations for 4 mana, and that's like, if he survives one turnaround, he could have survived many, and he has, like with you. So
yeah, he only needs to survive a turn and a half, and you're time stretching. And time stretch is usually enough to win the game, especially after like turn 5 or 6. Teferi will bury your opponents.
It's really brutal, so if you see it, try and kill it as fast as possible. But if you're playing really tuned, like mid to high powered games, put it in your deck.
This coupled with our last video, I'm going to just say it. Everyone who's watching this video, I would recommend you just go buy 1 copy of Teferi Master of Time, cast it once, and then realize how amazing it is. Next is Rishkar's Expertise. This card we haven't talked about in a while. It's 4 green for a sorcery. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. You can cast a spell with mana value 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. I think my opinion of this card was like really high, and then I played it a lot, and then I sort of fell off of it a little bit, but now I'm back. I love this card. I think it's sweet. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Rishkar's Expertise. It's so much card draw. It gets you almost all of the mana value you spent back right away.
Do you have it in Galta?
I don't know. That's a $20 deck. So if I think so.
Yeah, I was like, because this would rock there.
I mean, obviously, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for 6 mana, drawing cards, which is going to be bare minimum, I think you'd play this at least with a creature with 5 or more power, right?
Yeah, even 4 isn't the worst because you get to cast something right away.
Yeah, and then you cast something for 5 or less, which, you're going to try and get the 4 or 5 mana. So the other one's just green, basically. Like, you're not paying much more to draw all those cards than you would to play that spell in your hand to begin with.
Yeah, and this is a cycle of cards, but I don't really care about any of the other ones. They all have a similar ability of you can cast a spell with mana value equal to 1 less than whatever the spell is for free. But what Rishkar's Expertise does is it gives you more spells to choose from. And it says you're almost always going to have a 5 or a 4 drop to follow this up with. And it's going to be a huge impact spell. Obviously, this is better if your commander has 1,000,000 power, like with Ishai, I guess. Or I love it to use it alongside my boy Dargo and Galta and all those boys. But if you're going to fire this off for 4, 5, 6 plus, don't forget about it. It's great.
You'll get a lot of value from it. And
it's always better than you think it's going to be.
Oh, absolutely. The next card is, it's Death by 1,000 Cuts. Campbell, Console of Allocation. 1 white and black for a 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. In Commander, we're going to be casting 2+ spells a turn unless you're playing some very battle cruiser meta. So this adds up so quickly.
Yeah, this card is in the Magical Christmas Land level of threat assessment because I fully admit this card's annoying and it's pretty good. But every time it's in play, it rides the line of like, is this the best creature in play? Not really. Do I want it out for 10 turns? Also not really. But it's never an immediate threat. It's just like the perfect card for that type of like just being a nuisance and actually adding up over the course of the game. It's like, oh, Campbell finally got swept up in a board wipe. What did he do for me? Well, I gained 14 life and dealt 14 damage, and I only paid 3 mana. And I probably stopped people from playing spells at key points. Like, if you cast Campbell against me, I'm not going to go preordain Mishra's Bauble. I'm just not going to do it.
This is the blind obedience of creatures. It just adds up after a while. And just like a lot of people's thoughts with Painful Quandary, it's just the thought of, oh, it's hurting them more than me. So if Beezy's playing 10 baubles in the corner, I'm not going to remove Campbell because I'm like, okay, well, if he's going to lose 20 life from the 10 baubles, I'm not going to do anything about it because I'm losing 4 per turn, you know?
Yeah, and then you kind of wished that you did. but it's always too late. But it's never too late to go to Moxfield.com because they have the best deck building website, as Mia said earlier, ever on the planet. There are Home Depot customers who are looking to buy the correct type of wood for the deck that they're building, and they still go to Moxfield. They go, what the heck is Magic the Gathering? And they still get hooked because the UI is so intuitive, the site's so easy to use, everything is laid out so beautifully, and they just start playing Magic.
I love the fact that on Moxfield, you can go to the card that you're looking at and choose the printing and whether it's foil or not.
Yeah.
There's a Strixhaven one that I was looking at. It was like the counterspell, and I was trying to figure out which one. Is it the normal one, the foil etched one? And it had it all on there with the prices, too.
Yeah, you're going to be dazzled if you go to Moxfield just how much stuff they have there and how much of it is actually useful. You know, Redacted website, they had one update 3 years ago, and you're like, oh, cool. I can now cut cards from my deck. I don't have to delete it and start a new deck. But Moxfield's like 10 steps ahead. Get over to Moxfield and save yourself some time. You did just mention a card, though, like 39 seconds ago. What was that card?
Was it Painful Quandary?
I think it was. What does that card even do?
3 black for enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, they either lose 5 life or discard a card. And that adds up. It
adds up very quickly. This is not a small potatoes thing. The thing that I thought about this card, because I initially thought this card was terrible. Campbell I thought was good, but it ends up being great. This card I thought was trash, and it ends up being kind of annoying. I've been annoyed every time I see this thing. And I just looked at it like, you know, oh, this card was $12 back in the day. This isn't a $12 card. But now it's like $1, and it's definitely worth $1. It just, I don't know. 5 life is a solid chunk, but I don't just cast 1 spell. I'm going to cast 2, 3 spells. And it's like not enough of a detriment to get me to not cast them. So I'm going to just cast them and, you know, hemorrhage cards in my hand or lose life. And then, you know, when Painful Quandary goes away, eventually you dealt 20 damage and you got rid of 5 cards.
Absolutely. There's, I was playing this casually because I slotted it into Casual Kalia because I needed to fill some spaces really quickly. And I didn't realize, but I was playing against 2 Cascade decks. So I put this down and I went, oh wait, this just nukes both of your game plans.
Oh, you just can't do anything effectively. You get to play like 1 spell per turn, and then you just gotta pass. But these types of cards will bleed you dry real fast. You gotta kill them. Camball, you don't have to kill, but this one I think is like a must answer threat, because as soon as you cast like 3 spells and you didn't kill it, you're like, yeah, I should have killed it.
If you have discard synergies or you want to lose a lot of life, I guess like Rowan or something.
Yeah, that's different.
That might be different, and you might want to keep it on the field. But a lot of people rationalize this by saying, well, I'm not the one losing the most life. I'm not the one losing the most out of this because, the bobble players definitely are.
It's same with Camball, but I think...
But this is worse.
It's different, and you're a little bit more wrong for saying, oh, it doesn't really impact me. It's going to make you sad. It really is. And it's not a trash bulk rare. I am sorry, Painful Quandary. I wish I could go back in time when you were $12 to say, it's not worth $12, but it's pretty darn good.
I don't think it's worth $12 either, but slotting it into a deck that definitely didn't have any synergy with it, it was still good.
Yeah, you can kind of just throw this in. That's very surprising to me. I did not think they would be that good. Next, we have Breach the Multiverse. 5 black for a sorcery. Now, we've played a lot of games in person and in cons. We've heard some stories about this one. Each player mills 10. For each player, you can reanimate a creature or planeswalker from the player's graveyard, put them onto the battlefield under your control. Then your creatures become Phyrexians, whatever. But 7 mana, everybody mills 10, and you get the best thing from everyone's graveyard, not just from the things milled, from any graveyard put there for any reason. And you get them all into play. So it's a 7 mana 4-for-1. Guaranteed. I'm sorry, that's guaranteed 4-for-1. People have been telling us, and we have been seeing this card rock people.
I put it in my Duality of Drawing Cards deck, and it's been so good, especially since there's going to be usually at least one player doing something with the graveyard, whether it's just killing off a bunch of stuff to bring them back later, or, just having a lot of creatures with a big board wipe, and you're going to have the best pick out of those. I think I just played it while we were at Magic Vegas, and you saw me get 25 power on the board instantly.
Yeah, and we have all these creatures now that have, wonky ETBs, like you can get back in a Tali with it, and then you get 4 more cards, and you get back a Grey Merchant. Now you're draining everybody. Breach the Multiverse is fantastic. The only downside is that each player mills 10. I, as your opponent, would love to just mill 10 cards, but it makes up for the cost of letting everyone mill 10 by giving you the best thing right away, so they can't take something before you can take it with Breach. That's how the spell resolves. Just a great card. I need to play this in more decks. I don't have it in anything right now, but this video and my last 10 times seeing it motivating me to put it in.
It's really fun. So it's both powerful if you're playing those like mid-power games, and it's just a fun card to cast.
I think it's fun, yeah.
Do you have it? Are you playing it in Marchesa?
I'm going to put it in like my good stuff deck, like my Mardu Jundam out type thing. I think this is good enough for that type of deck.
Yeah, I hope so, because I want you to keep it. This is super fun for me. The next card is a brutal commander, Adeline Resplendent Cathar. 1 white for a X4 Vigilance, where the X/star is equal to the number of creatures you control. Whenever you attack, for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. Doesn't mean she has to attack, though, which makes it, like, trigger every time.
Yeah, it triggers immediately. This is not only a good commander, but it's a card I'd recommend in many, many, many 99s. It has a very high power, so that can work with a lot of decks. It makes a ton of tokens right away, which also works with a lot of decks. It's got a decent stat line of like 4 toughness, which is just chunky for a 3-drop. There's really nothing Adeline doesn't do. If you play a 2-drop and then play Adeline on turn 3, if you're like on the play, now people are not even going to be able to kill all of the 1/1s that attack, which usually just get gobbled up and serve for like temporary sack value or like just creatures entering the battlefield value. Now they're going to start getting aggroed out by this card basically by itself. Like Adeline is a card, you know, I was like, we'll see how it plays. Why is this $10? I have so much more respect for it.
This has Scoot Swarm vibes because it's like you blink and the field's flooded with them already.
Like, what is it, a 12/4? I have to chump block it? Like, what, huh?
Plus it has Vigilance, so it's always going to also be the best blocker.
Yeah, it basically has Death Touch, right? If it's got infinity power, it's going to just kill whatever. If it does block, it'll just kill whatever it blocks. Adeline kind of messed up. We had to take it out of the Commander Cube. That was kind of like a mid-level environment that we did. She was just too good. It was like, turn 3 Adeline every game, like, not tenable. It's just going to crush everyone in that format.
I've seen this on the field, and then someone playing an Elish Norn like 2 turns later, and it's just GG at that point.
Yeah, you get to those, like, very rare scenarios where you could get aggroed out of the game. It starts with Adeline and then ends with some kind of, like, a Cathar's Crusade, which is very good with Adeline, or Elish Norn or something to just slam the door, and just all of a sudden you're at 15 life, and it's like turn 8, and you go, what happened? Adeline.
I know when you build decks revolving around a certain creature type, humans are usually not at the top of the list, considering there's not as many activated abilities, but this really brings the synergy that you are looking for when you build a creature type deck.
Yeah, if you're human typal, 3 humans at once starts to just matter for a lot of different things. Like Kindred Discovery, 3, like you attack with a human, draw a card, get 3 humans, draw 3 cards, and then you're like, I don't even care what happens to all these attackers. Sorry, buddies, but I got my cards. I'm ready to go. And if you're ready to go to another video that's going to be very helpful, I would say there's another Overperformers video. Mia, what's our fact of the day?
Play for fun.